So this week we have a lesson that's going to be focusing on anatomy. I know last week we covered faces, and the week before that we covered simple color palettes. So this week we're going to work on some simple anatomies. We're going to take it kind of in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to start with waist up this week, and then next week we'll move into more advanced anatomy lessons. So tune in, and I hope we learned some good things today. Hey guys, so welcome back to another week of drawing lessons. Today we're going to start with some simple anatomy lessons. I want to take anatomy into bite-sized proportions because a lot of the times it can be daunting to do the whole body at once. So today we're going to start with kind of a waist up, and I'm going to walk you through the different parts of the upper body. So something I learned that makes things easier is definitely always have some kind of reference for the pose that you want to do. And if you can't find a pose online that you can't quite put together for what you want to do, you can always just take a picture of yourself doing the same pose that you want to use. So notice how there is a lot of movement in this. So I'm going to do a kind of like a trace over so you can kind of see what we're talking about today. So what I like to do is I like to follow motion with simple line work. So if you follow through the top of the head, let me get my pen. If you follow through the top of the head, see that curve that it makes? You just want to follow that down through the neck and down to where the torso stops. So that's your line movement here. That's the way the body's moving. And then what I like to do next is we'll come across shoulder to shoulder, come across. And then I like to draw simple circles and shapes because that's the easiest way to block down bodies. So for the head, I'll usually do like an oval. We're oval shaped. You have your oval here. And then the neck is really just a tube. So there we go. And then for the torso, it helps to kind of think of it as inverted triangles. So it's a triangular shape. And then of course, you'd come down here and you'd round it in the middle for the waist part. And then we have another little rounding that goes on down here. But for shoulders and other joints and wrists, all that kind of thing, I like to think of them as circles. So that's where your shoulder is going to be. You've got your elbow and wrist. We'll do it again over here. Elbow. We've kind of got a little bit of a shoulder here. And then the wrist. So the next thing to do is to connect these. Again, we're going to use those tube shapes. If you think about it, most of our bodies break down into simple shapes, and that'll really help you kind of tackle the more daunting task of doing anatomy. So again, circles and tubes. And for the hands, I kind of like to do, they're kind of triangular in a way. And then the fingers, again, each joint, circle, and then tubes. And the fingertips I like to use as like a rounded off tube. It kind of helps. So, now for females, I'll kind of, you can see where the breast comes here. I'll just kind of I'd usually do a circle. Kind of like a oblong kind of egg shape. So it kind of gives me an idea of how that's going to look. Of course, once you do clothing and stuff over, it's going to look different. So, this is the basic anatomy. This is a quick, easy way. I like to call it like the doll method because it kind of is doll-like with the joints and the simple shapes. So, bring that back up. What I'm going to do now is not trace it and do it myself. So we've got our reference image up here. So you're just gonna, I always start with the head. It's very easy that way. And then I kind of draw a line. Again, we're going back to our faces. We've got those lines for your proportion marks. And then I'll take this line here and I'll push it through so I get my movement. It's kind of like your center balance if you think about it. So we got the neck. Go ahead and do that torso. And of course, if you stylize things, it's not going to be as realistic of proportions. That's another great thing about illustration. But you still want them to make sense. So here we got the circle. I have my tube for the upper arm. Another circle for the elbow joint. And then another tube for that forearm. And then triangle kind of square. But your hands are in a very tough position. I picked a tough one. So, circles, joints, and tubes. Thumb, I kind of do like a trapezoid type shape. That's how it is on the hand if you look at it. It's a little bit different than our fingers. Of course, instead of these fingers, it's good to remember is we have two joints here. Where the thumb, we just have the single. Because hands are like one of the hardest things, and I know so many talented people that still hate drawing hands. It can be the hardest thing to do, but it just takes a lot of practice and drawing hands in different positions. It's something I've just started getting better at too. And you'll just keep looking back at your image here, kind of help you put where the shapes need to be. And that line's gonna follow through down there. So now we've got that kind of blocked in. Again, we're going back to that face anatomy. So the way her face is turned upwards, we're gonna follow these lines. And again, simple shapes. I'm actually gonna change this up a little bit. I thought it would be cute to have this be like, I'm gonna do like a donut. So I'm actually gonna thicken this out. So we'll lose some of those details, which is no problem. Like I said, this is just supposed to be like a base to help you get your anatomy kind of straightened out when you're working on a project. So we'll lose some detail, but no big deal. See how simplified everything is? So that's just our loose sketch. So next thing to do is to come in here and define everything. This is usually when I start adding clothing and more details and things like that. You can just lay that directly over your anatomy sketches. So see how we're just kind of following those lines we laid out for ourselves already? This is when I'll start defining features more. I made the hand a little big, so what I'm gonna do, shrink that down a bit. And then we're gonna make this forearm wider. It's all about style, so it depends really what kind of style you want to go for. So I kind of want to change the hands up a little bit. But it's a larger item, so. And it's always good to you can kind of change up or mix poses. So it makes everything more unique. It's always best to try to study and draw from life, but I know a lot of this is hard. I still kind of like just using the internet because it's easily accessible, and for a lot of folks. So I know in school they were always telling us to draw from live people, and it is helpful because you get to see dimensions and a lot of stuff like that, but not all of us can afford to take figure drawing classes or have the access to a model. And I've kind of got donuts in the brain, if you could tell. So see how we're coming together on this? We're really filling out that base sketch that we did. This is what I do every time. And it really helps. It always helps to have multiple sketches because you can really play and move things along.
No, I don't draw those. It's Disney. Yeah, the artist was actually right over there. She's doing a lot of this.
Alright. So this is when we can start filling out these fun details, like in the face, because I like working on faces a lot. You guys might notice who this is that I'm working on. Maybe. If you're familiar with this anyway. And don't ever be afraid to keep adjusting and working on things, because sometimes you just have to keep playing with it to get it just right. And the more you draw, the more you'll start to kind of figure out your style, and you'll start kind of figuring out what looks right for you. That's something I love about illustration, is everybody's style is unique, and you can kind of bend the rules of basic anatomy, because we're not going for realism. But you do want to make it believable, which is important to do, even if you have a super stylized, to make some kind of rules for your anatomy and all that kind of stuff. Because you want your characters to look believable. So I'm actually working on V right now, which I think I made this too tall, so I can just kind of, like I said, you always have to play. Don't be afraid to keep playing with it and try it again. It's like I feel like now the head's too small, so we'll come in here. Again, y'all, digital, man. Makes this faster. Normally I'd have to keep redrawing it by hand, but whoops. Of course I went backwards. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it glitches out and it won't save it when I move it. Alright, there we go. This is our dragon mascot, V, or Vivian. So I don't like how skinny this looks. I know she's really skinny, but V's kind of muscular because she's supposed to be a blacksmith. So we're gonna bulk that out a little bit more. And she's got these little scales, I always add. She's got scales on her face, and her elbows, and her shoulders that I usually draw. Just to show that she's kind of like a humanized version of a black dragon. Usually I give her little tiny, like little bat wings, but I think for this time I'm just gonna kind of leave them off. Just because it looks cuter. So I kind of put her like in a little maid cafe outfit with her little donut. But see how we went from this drawing to like the doll stylized to finishing more details? That's pretty much the start to doing anatomy. Like I said, the biggest thing you can do is to practice constantly. I struggle even now to try to draw at least one thing a day, especially when I get super busy with the shop. But it is important to try to draw as frequently as often. I have people ask me all the time, oh man, you're so talented. You must just be, natural talent. No, I'm not. I had to work really hard at it. If you see my drawings from like 15 years ago, it's hilarious, like the level of difference. I took a break for a few years, but I kind of wish I hadn't, because I think I would be even further along now as well. It's one of those things you just have to work at, and you have to be passionate about it and want to progress and move on. So next I'm going to come in here and finalize it even further. We're going to ink over it. I really like this sketch. Just pretty cute. I always like to start. Sometimes I start with the hands, sometimes I start with the face. And I think the way this is positioned, I'm going to work from head down. It just usually depends where everything is. Everybody has their own preference, how they like stuff. Like I said, there's no right and wrong to art. It really boils down to preferences. Or what you enjoy doing. I mean, I went through school for a while, and everybody would always poo-poo on animation and anime, saying that wasn't art. And it is, but it is. Pop culture is art in itself. And it takes just as much work to finalize even simplified styles. And I think being able to convey emotion and to tell stories with art is extremely beautiful. Of course, when you're in school, everybody wants you to do realism. Unless you go to a specialized illustration school. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's validity in trying to draw realism because you learn anatomy and things like that. But it's not a technique for everybody. I struggle personally, so I just work stylized. Everybody has a different way to tell the world about their art, and I don't think it's better one way or the other. And I hate that a lot of people feel that realism is the only way to go. No, and especially digital versus traditional too. There's a whole nother thing on that where a lot of people don't think they think digital art's easier. Which, I mean, there is cheats and there's stuff you can do to make your life easier, but it still takes skill to do it. I mean, I'm a fan of working smarter, not harder. Especially as a media production company. I also like digital too, because I feel like once you spend your amount on it, it's a lot more affordable in the long run than having to continuously buy canvas and paints and all that stuff. And it's more accessible to more people. I mean, some people live out in the middle of nowhere and they don't have Michael's or Hobby Lobby or whatever the other art supply stores out there. But if they can they can order digital stuff and get it in, they're good. I feel like tablets and digital art is the answer to the current society we live in. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with traditional either. I do enjoy doing traditional on occasion. Because it's a good break and it kind of refreshes some techniques, but it's just not accessible for everybody. And I believe art's for everyone. Everybody should be able to make art. It's one of the most basic, beautiful parts of human expression. It's a great stress relief too. Because all I think about when I'm putting this pen to this screen is what I'm doing on the screen. I don't think about anything else. Sometimes I think we need that. We need to clear our minds. It's good to have activities where you don't have to really think about other things. Oops. See, I'm just following the lines I did already. Just kind of working down. I usually come back later and do the extra little detail stuff. I just want to get this mostly outlined. Details are usually the last thing you want to focus on. You just want to get those big shapes done. Oops. Sometimes you'll find yourself still correcting stuff even in the inking. And so we draw multiple times. Sometimes you don't catch it. So it's always good to go back a few times and kind of check things over. With clothing, especially like depending on the material, you always want to follow directions. So you see how I have like the sleeve here, it's curved downwards and then it's curved downwards because that's the direction the arm's moving. That helps make things more believable and it gives things shape. And with wrinkles and things, you always kind of want to follow the shape of the body part that it's over. Clothing is all about movement, and that's something that takes a lot of practice to figure out. Something I still am figuring out. And I feel like this looks awkward, so what I'm gonna do is add a hint of that sleeve coming out from the other arm, the ruffles. And I'm actually gonna kind of add a little bit of arm, just so it doesn't look as odd. I know it's not like that in the actual picture, but I think sometimes you just gotta change things to make it look good to you. Alright. So I wanted some stripes. And those, again, you want to do your directional, so follow the movement of the shape that it's on. And then you have creases like this. You want to remember that the lines are going to bend, they won't be straight. Because they'll bend around the shape as well. And they'll bend around wrinkles. See how it moves? Clothing, a lot of clothing is about pinch and pull of the fabric. Ruffles, I like to simplify by just kind of making like an open V. You have it go wide and then thin at the bottom. So it kind of gives it that shape. And it kind of starts thinning out the distance the further back you go from the view. And I like to add some little extra lines and stuff. Just kind of gives that crease and wrinkle that you'd get from ruffles. And there's lots of different ways to do ruffles, but that's the way I like to do. And I want some more of these stripes. So I like using a lot of pattern. I think it makes clothing more interesting. And you can also tell what kind of character you have as well through their clothing. Are they fun? Are they flirty? Are they serious? Are they disheveled? Clothing says a lot. It's a good storytelling tool. Alright, so there we go. That's what your finished product's gonna look like. But you can compare the similarities to our reference image to here with some few differences. So I hope you learned some stuff today. I hope this will help you kind of take anatomy at bite-sized pieces. Come back next week. We will have some more things to do. Hey, I hope you guys learned some useful tips and tricks today. But before you go, I wanted to go ahead and show you some new items that we've got in this week. So recently I moved to a larger button size, and I think these are absolutely fantastic. They're nice and big and loud and should show off your type of personality and your expression. These would be great to go on tote bags, purses, even jean jackets, because it's getting to jean jacket weather. So you can go to etsy.com/shop/Vulcans Forge Studios, I will also add that into the comment section. Come back next week to learn some more awesome art tricks. See you later!